This is Beyond the Mosh Pit, where we talk about more than fast music and aggressive dancing. Hardcore punk has been around since the late 1970s, but a lot has changed since then. In today's episode, we discuss the Gen Z takeover in the hardcore scene. Younger people are booking shows, playing in bands, and filling up the mosh pit. Gen Z has made the scene more inclusive, and the music itself has changed. It's more varied than ever, with new subcultures and sounds taking over. Now let's jump in.
I'm Lucas Reed. I book and promote shows here in Syracuse. I also play in a couple bands around here. When we went into lockdown, we were all the young heads, we were all the young kids. And then coming out of it, I mean, it was only a year and a half, but the first show back was right in that corner there. And straight up, 75% of that crowd were high schoolers I had never seen before. Right before lockdown hit, we had a big New Year's Day show. It was the first one that the city had seen in a while. I remember putting that together, and I mean, at the time I was only 19 years old, and that was a big thing to a lot of the people that I looked up to and the people that kind of showed me the way. And they were like, oh wow, that's crazy. So the younger generation is kind of starting to pick up the slack, and they started to take notice of that.
With this generational shift has come more diversity. The tri-state scene has events like Break Free Fest, which is a hardcore punk festival held in Philadelphia featuring people of color and their bands.
I definitely see more bands with Filipino, Black, Brown, Native people of color, and it's just cool to see that shift in representation, where it's one of those things where it's not we're or marginalized groups are being highlighted as a holy shit, that's so uncommon. It's more just yeah, we're here and we're fucking in your face.
As Gen Z takes over hardcore, we see more diverse representation on stage. Amphette is a femme-fronted metal and hardcore punk band with queer representation coming out of central New York. The band helps to make the scene more inclusive for marginalized communities and provides a space for people to feel safe at their shows. The band includes bassist and vocalist Piper Markowski, guitarist Kay Leach, guitarist Liv Harvey, and drummer Kirsten George.
Heavier music. It's starting to change now, but historically is very, cis white male. So it's cool that us, as well as other bands, are kind of a conduit for people's, emotions, and especially in feeling underrepresented.
In the beginning, we played a lot of bands that were other bands were all men punk and metal. So the crowd was white men there to see their friend bands. But I think now we have this group that I'm very proud of queer to younger teens to young adults of color who are looking for a place to hang out, and I'm glad that they pick our shows. I think it's really cool as an indigenous queer person on stage. That's never something I saw. So I know when I look out in the crowd and see people that look like me when I was a kid, I know they're looking at me I can be in a band, I can do that. And I think that's one of my favorite parts, is the representation.
Representation goes beyond the stage. It is part of the Gen Z movement towards greater inclusivity. Hardcore punk has always been a tight-knit community, but it hasn't always been a welcoming scene for everyone. While hardcore still has many traditional roots, it's changing, and that's thanks to younger generations getting involved beyond the mosh pit.